Why did Kafka keep failing the Defense Force exam? Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to take a look at one of the central questions of Kaiju number 8. Not where the Kaiju come from, not what is Kaiju number 9's next plan, but at the question of why Kafka failed the application so many times. Because this is a very good question, and thanks to the Redditor who proposed it, it really got me thinking. There will be spoilers through chapter 35 of the manga, and other minor spoilers further on, so if you don't want to see any of those, you can click away now to check out my books below the video. Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, a collection of short, absurd science fiction stories. Laugh, snort, giggle your way through exploring the universe, or just hit the like and subscribe button. Now, why did Kafka fail so many times? We know that he is at least of average intelligence, probably significantly above average intelligence. In his physical prime, he was at least of average strength and speed. Up until his late 20s, he was able to maintain an average position. Presumably, he did better before that. Other than the captains, no one in the Defense Force really stands out as being any smarter, stronger, or faster than Kafka. So why the failure? We have a few clues. Kafka tells Reno that he always failed the second portion of the test, the practical portion, implying that the written test was of no concern to him after a while. We see Kafka and Mina going in to take the second portion of the test together, so the year that Mina applied, it would have been Kafka's 5th year of application, Kafka's 5th try. He made it past the written portion easily enough, and we know he was at least average, if not better, in the physical portion. Kafka thinks to himself that we see him in early chapters thinking to himself that the last time he did this, he was just behind the middle of the pack, so average, or just barely under average. And he was already 30 years old by that time. Again, he would have been better physically before that. So we can assume that it always came down to the second part of the practical exam. The part that's almost never the same, the part you can't prepare for, so the part that reveals the most about the inherent character of the individual applicants. Who is prepared for this inherently? Now, it is clear that Kafka has never had his released combat power measured before, so we know that that was not the deciding factor. He seems really surprised that he got a 0, and even if Kafka's power had been 0 before the Kaiju crawled down his throat, Hoshina would have known that a 0 was possible because Kafka would have been testing during the time that Hoshina was in charge of the 3rd Division. So, who were the proctors who oversaw most of Kafka's applications, and what did the Defense Force proctors see in Kafka that made him then reject a candidate that in his 20s was probably both physically and intellectually better than a lot of the candidates that they did accept? Let's not bury the lead here. I've articulated the question. I think it was Kafka's brash disregard for his own safety and well-being, combined with his disregard for social protocol. I think that the important thing to remember is that what we are seeing here in the story of Kaiju number 8 is the refined form of Kafka, who has learned a lot from all of his hard work. He has been growing, gaining confidence, growing more mature. He hasn't taken the test in 2 years. Therefore, the last time he took the test, he was 2 years less mature and confident than he is now. So the things that make him deeply valuable now, his practical knowledge of Kaiju and his ability to form the heart of his unit by lifting everyone up, he wouldn't have had those pluses to counter his minuses or his just plain averageness back when he last took the test. So what was that minus that held him back, that even though he was average in other ways, made him not worth it to the Defense Force? I think there's a major clue in what Mina says to him when he's in handcuffs on the way to the 1st Division base after she's taken him into custody after revealing himself as Kaiju number 8. She refers to him charging out into the middle of the field to punch the Kaiju bomb. And she said, yes, she was shocked to see that he was Kaiju number 8, but the main thought in her head was that was such a Kafka thing to do. Another data point comes in what Hoshina says in the training arc at the shrine. Kafka is rushing into fights and relies on Kaiju number 8's super strengths and regeneration to protect him. And when he's a human, he fights in the same way. Just like how the Director General pointed out that Kaiju number 8 was letting his body be damaged in order to score hits. I don't think that was entirely the Kaiju. I think the Kaiju was taking its template off of Kafka's behavior. Then we see how Reno responds to Kafka's scolding of Kokoru about valuing her own safety during the application arc. Reno is absolutely incensed at the hypocrisy of Kafka, of all people, telling Kokoru to value her own safety. There's a common theme here. Kafka's defining character trait socially, what people notice about him, is not his intellect, is not his physical prowess. What the Proctors would have seen in him is that he acts without thinking about his own safety. Now, think about how that Russian first, ask questions later attitude would look without the regeneration of the Kaiju body to back it up. Kafka, a flesh and blood mortal, rushing into danger on thoughtless impulse, good-hearted impulse to help others, but thoughtless impulse nonetheless, would pretty quickly get himself killed, and other members of his unit killed. Acting without a thought of your own safety is very much not a trait that is wanted in military situations. At least it's not wanted in excess. Even from the most brutal, pragmatic perspective possible, a soldier is, at the very least, an expensive piece of equipment that requires years of training and investment. The costliest part of an airplane? The pilot. No military wants a machine that's going to destroy itself. I mean, barring bombs, of course. But no military especially wants soldiers with zero care for their own safety. They don't want it to be too high, but they don't want it to be zero. And far more importantly, all militaries want soldiers who stop and think before they run into situations without orders. To be effective modern warriors in any kind of group combat situation, the warriors must act as a unit. They must be soldiers. And I can totally see a brash young Kafka, full of his desire to protect, ignoring orders to do what he thinks was right. His own safety and his continued use as a tool to the military be danged right down to the depths of the rift the Kaiju crawl out of. We even see this in the current battle when he defies the orders of the headquarters to go rescue Mina because he's too concerned about the civilians. Which brings me to my second point. What every military does want is soldiers to follow orders and fit into the command structure. Kafka, we all love this about him, especially as American readers, but our boy does not follow orders well, and he is constantly flaunting the rank structure in the Defense Force. He calls officers by their first names, not just Mina. He comes up with great ideas that will allow him to do things better than the way the Defense Force is doing them now. He takes initiative at every turn. These are traits that can, not always, but can, help you succeed in the private sector, like, say, Kaiju cleanup. But no military ever liked this behavior in their foot soldiers. In this series, we are seeing a 32-year-old Kafka after he's been beaten down by life a bit, so that tendency to flaunt the structure has been suppressed, meaning it was more powerful before. 18-year-old Kafka, full of teenage confidence and brash assurance, I can see any recruiter other than Mr. Dark Sense of Humor Hoshina himself marking Kafka down at every turn. Does not fit the psychological profile for a good officer and is too average to make up for it in skill or power. I see that being in the notes in a lot of his applications. Jin Narumi, if you look at him as a contrast, is all of those things to a hilt. He calls the senior officer by nicknames, and the others by names without honorifics. He's far worse than Kafka in that way, but the Defense Force is willing to look the other way because he can one-shot Godzilla. Kafka was not obedient enough to make a good soldier, and was not skilled enough to make a great soldier like Narumi. There also might be an element here of Narumi and the other wild cards that had gone before Kafka had kind of softened the Defense Force, or maybe Director General Iso Shinomiya had a hand in this by accepting Narumi. He trained the other officers to be a little more accepting of that behavior. But that behavior, that defiance of social protocols, yes sir, Mr. So-and-so, sir, and the complete lack of disregard for his own safety does not is probably why Kafka Haibane took and failed the Kaiju Defense Force application 12-ish times, 18 to 30. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Is this the reason, or can you think of another? Was Kafka just not a sufficiently well-greased cog to fit into the machine of the Defense Force? Let me know in the comments below if you can. If you can think of something else. Meanwhile, hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now, and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boom in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorbettyadams.com for a signed copy.